Hey guys, welcome to GP class and my most ambitious attempt yet to teach a little online here. So we're going to talk today about the Franco Prussian War of 1870, which is perhaps the most important of the wars that we've gone over. We've been kind of digging into a couple of these conflicts that rise up out of the Industrial Revolution and building our way towards World War I. And this is maybe the most important of them. So hang in with me and let's enjoy the ride. So I'm going to start with some background, and I really want to just go straight over here to what happened. So it's important to know that basically France had just tried to annex Luxembourg before this war began. And in case you can't see, let me just zoom in a little bit closer. Luxembourg is that little black circle, okay? France is the majority of this map. And they couldn't do it. If France can't fight a war with a country that is like 1/100th the size of it, maybe they shouldn't be picking fights with anybody else. That might be a good idea. In the gold circle, you'll notice a region called Alsace and Lorraine. We're going to come back to that later, but I want you to just look at that and see where it is. It's one of the border regions here, and it's going to become a major sticking point between a number of countries in the future. So I'll get back to that later. But there's the background. The background is that Napoleon III, who was the King of France, has just recently tried to invade Luxembourg and failed, and in the process he ticked off Otto von Bismarck, who's the Chancellor of Prussia. That's going to lead us to kind of this conflict. But before we get deeper in, let's look a little closer. Look into those eyes, the eyes of Napoleon III. Look at that very carefully waxed mustache. This is not a very intimidating person. This is a person who looks like he's like, would you please leave me alone so I can get back to enjoying my fine wine? Ho ho. He's not a warrior. He has the name Napoleon, but this is not Napoleon Bonaparte. This is not the famous Napoleon. This is a couple generations down, same family, but he's not up to snuff with his ancestor. And on the other side, let's look at the Prussians. So the first and most important thing is, what is Prussia, Mr. John? I'm glad you asked. Is that like Russia? No, it's Russia with a P. No, it is this. It is the largest German state. So in 1870, the kingdoms of the Holy Roman Empire had collapsed hundreds of years earlier into bits and pieces, kind of in the aftermath of the Reformation. It exploded. And for a while, there was no Germany because there was all these Germanic princes, and some of them were Protestant and some were Catholic, and they fought with each other. And so as this map kind of shows, this was Germany. It was this amalgam of different princedoms that were not one big state. What happens is Prussia is the biggest of these princedoms, of these little states. It's in kind of yellowish color there, and it is working on uniting Germany back into one. So one of the major factors of this war is going to be the unification of Germany. That's one of the goals. So as my thing says, Bismarck said, I knew that a Franco-Prussian War must take place for united Germany to be formed. And that is his goal. He wants to unite Germany under Prussia. So Prussia has nothing to do with Russia. It's Germany. Well, the biggest of the German states. And it's the one that's going to work on trying to unite Germany. So again, though, let's go look into the eyes of the commander. And here we have Bismarck. That is a steely glare. That is an intimidating person. This is a warrior's warrior, a man's man. If I have to choose just based on portraits who I think is going to win this war, I'm picking Bismarck every day. He does not look like a person who wants to be messed around with. This is not the one you want as your teacher, okay? He's going to be brutal in his punishments and harsh and strict. Bismarck was a no-nonsense individual. You'll also notice he's wearing a funny hat. Okay, that's not actually a funny hat. That's a Prussian hat. It's unique and iconic to the period. Basically, every German soldier would have worn that kind of hat. It was part of their uniform. And it's one of the ways you can really tell German soldiers from this time. So anytime in a picture you see the people with the funny pointed hats, they're Germans, they're Prussians. So let's dig a little deeper into Bismarck, though, because Bismarck had a philosophy, what we call the Realpolitik. And again, let me zoom in here for you. But basically, the Realpolitik is a might makes right philosophy. It's a belief that if I can do it, I should do it, and that ethical considerations shouldn't be taken into account. So it doesn't matter if it's morally right, as long as I'm strong enough to do it, I should do it. So again, another quote here. Bismarck says, Prussia must concentrate and maintain its firepower for the favorable moment which has already passed by several times. We have to be ready to take advantage of our superior force and make other people do what we want. Prussia's boundaries, the borders according to the Vienna treaties, are not favorable to a healthy state life. We're not big enough. We need more space. Ironically, that's going to be echoed by Hitler in the Second World War. The great questions of the time will not be resolved by speeches and majority decisions. That was the mistake of 1848 and 49, but by iron and blood. And so what we have here is Bismarck clearly saying, democracy isn't going to solve our problems. Diplomacy, speech making isn't going to solve our problems. We can't all get together and sing Kumbaya. The only way to solve Prussia's problems is with iron and blood, and what he means by that is through war. It's by being stronger than our enemies and taking from them what we want. That is the realpolitik. If I can beat you up, take whatever I want from you, then I'm going to. If I'm stronger than you, then you have to give me what I want. And it doesn't matter if it's rightfully yours. Now, again, that's not how ethics work. But that is what drove Bismarck, and that is often what drives history. So understanding that that policy was there is crucial to understanding this war, and it's going to be crucial to understanding the background and some of the causes of World War I, because a lot of people are operating under this mentality. Rather than looking at what's right or should be done, just like the British in the Opium Wars. Was it right of them to addict the Chinese population to opium and sell them illegal drugs and then get mad about it when the Chinese tried to police the drug trade? No. But the British had bigger guns, and they had better guns, and they had steam-powered warships like the Nemesis, so they beat up the Chinese and did it anyway. That's the realpolitik. That's what's driving these wars, and that's what's really destabilizing the world in this time. So I wanted you to understand that concept. So let's go a little bit deeper. Now, what I have here is a number of background advantages, because this is going to be a one-sided war. In case you haven't caught on yet by my allusions, one of them is going to win. So before we get into those advantages, it's important to note that Bismarck, because he wanted to unite Germany, felt like he couldn't declare war on France. If he declared war on France, the rest of the German princedoms would have no reason to join him in the battle. So he's actually going to insult Napoleon III and get Napoleon III to attack him. Because when Napoleon III attacks him, he can then say to all the other German princes, join us, mutual defense of Germany, come to our aid, let's work together. And then when we work together, we'll see how great that is, and then we'll make the German Empire and unite. That's his goal, and that's what he does. So he goads the French into attacking him, but he goads them into attacking him because he knows he's going to win. He wouldn't do it if he didn't. So why does he know he's going to win? Well, here's 4 reasons. Number 1, the Prussian armies are going to be dramatically superior because of Krupp cannons. Now, you might say, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo, cannons with a fancy K in front of them. No, these are super cannons of their days. These are a total technologically superior weapon to what the French have and to what anybody else have. And in this period of time, the German Krupp cannon manufacturers will soon start selling their cannons all over the world. The Japanese, for use in the Sino-Japanese War, to others because they're the best cannons in the world. So what that is going to do is the Krupp factories are going to make the first steel cannons. Now you might say, Mr. John, whoop-de-doo, the first steel cannons. No, first, look at this picture. These are huge. Second is the advantage of steel cannons over the French counterparts, which were made of bronze, is steel is a stronger metal. It can handle heat better. It's more flexible. And that meant that when the French had to fire their cannons and then cool them down before they could fire them again, the Germans could fire and fire and fire. And so these German Krupp cannons, these Prussian Krupp cannons, could fire about 5 times as many shots as quickly as the French cannons could. And that meant that if they had equal numbers of cannons, it was the equivalent of the Germans having 5 times as many cannons for practical purposes of how much bombardment they could do. That is a major battlefield advantage that the Germans had. The second is railways. Now you might be sitting there saying, Mr. John, woo-hoo-hoo, railways. But Railways were the way that the Germans could move their troops and supplies into position to outnumber the French. This is going to be crucial. At any point, the Germans are going to be better at moving those giant cannons into position, at moving superior numbers of troops into position, and at repositioning their armies to respond to the French invasion so they can outmaneuver them. The irony here is that it's not like Germany was super well developed in terms of railways and France was like way behind. I looked up a list at the time of the density of railway networks in countries, and I think Germany was about third in the world, and France was fourth. They were like one place behind Germany, but the German network was better. The German timing was better, and so the French are going to run into problems where they can't move their troops fast enough, and they can't get enough things into place, and they can't get enough food and artillery into place, and the Germans can, because they're denser. It gives them a major advantage here in the conflict. Number 3, and now we're getting away from technology and towards tactics, and that is conscription. The Germans are the first country to really use conscription. The best way to explain this is, do you know any Koreans? Because Korea does conscription. Every Korean, when they graduate high school, is going to have to go into the army for a couple of years and possibly leave their college after their first year or whatever and get trained how to fight, so that if North Korea ever attacks, the entire Korean population can suddenly become part of the army and they can all grab their guns and go to war. That's what the Germans do, and they're the first ones to do it. The Prussian conscription is revolutionary here. So the Prussian army is actually smaller than the French army. The French army has 400,000 regular troops. The Prussian army has maybe 200,000, 300,000 regular troops. But they're able, through conscription, to mobilize 1.2 million troops very quickly at the start of this war. So the French have the bigger army and they come and invade, but as soon as they start mobilizing their men, the Prussians have 3 times as many troops ready to meet them and surround them and outnumber them 3-1. That gives them a major advantage. And the last of these advantages, the last thing I'm really going to get to in this video, and then I'll go to a second video on this topic, is the general staff. Now, again, you might be thinking, Mr. John, general staff, why does that matter? It matters, besides the fact that I've got an awesome picture of old Prussian guys, note the pointy helmets. It matters because the French are going to be operating under the old system, and that is Napoleon III will lead his armies off to battle with the men and tell them what to do, and his next general will tell them what to do. The Germans have a whole structure where Bismarck is never at the direct battlefield. He's never in danger of being killed or captured because he is masterminding the strategy, and he has generals under him and field commanders under them. And so the field commanders always have their orders, and if they ever get in trouble or die or get captured, the German army is still functioning normally. The German army is still able to reinforce and surround and compose their main strategy because Bismarck is behind the scenes with his top generals all the time. And the field commanders might get captured, the field commanders might die, but they can then be replaced by the higher-ups. When the French run into a problem, which is going to happen very quickly because Napoleon III, and I'll talk about this later in the next video in the battles, is going to find himself surrounded and besieged, he then cannot give orders to the rest of his army. And that paralyzes the French's ability to respond because they are going to lose their leader, and when they lose their leader, they don't know who's in charge. And it takes them a while to figure it out. And every day that they're paralyzed by that is a day that the Prussians are able to get closer to Paris and closer in and cause more trouble, do more damage. It makes their chances of repelling them much less. So being the first to have a general staff, being the first to do conscription, being the first to have steel cannons, and having a superior railway network is going to set Prussia up for a really one-sided conflict. And we'll get into that in more detail in the second. So, hope you're having a good time. I'll see you in that video.